Believe it or not, director Denis Villeneuve's much-discussed big-screen adaptation of Dune is finally right around the corner. This film is primed to burst out of the sand and spray spice all over theaters on October 22nd, so we figured that now would be a good time to run down some of the cool behind-the-scenes facts and stories to help get you even more hyped for the movie. Here are some of Dune's behind-the-scenes secrets. Let's cut right to the chase and say that Dune has a troubled history when it comes to adaptations. David Lynch's 1984 version of the film only barely surfaced after more than a decade, and a half a dozen directors failed to get it right before him. And it was such a commercial and critical bomb that Lynch regularly has his name removed from the various cuts and re-edits. It has earned itself a bit of a reappraisal in the past few years, but still hangs around the neck of any potential remake like an albatross. The 2000 miniseries version from the Sci-Fi Channel and, hold on, let me check my notes here. Oh yeah, the Hallmark Channel, people. Yeah, this one fared better with critics and audiences, scoring a sequel based on the next two novels in the series and even winning a couple of Emmys. Even then, the miniseries is relentlessly dry. That's a little desert pun there. Okay. And that turn of the millennium TV CGI has aged like the finest of muds. All that being said, it makes sense that director Denis Villeneuve had his doubts about taking on a new theatrical version of the material. The guy behind Arrival and Blade Runner 2049 has a particular way of doing things and, as we'll see, is insistent on sticking to them, even on something that some directors of his caliber would consider work for hire. Even then, the director has stated in interviews that he had his doubts about whether he and his team could pull off the project until early one day of shooting with star Timothee Chalamet. And what scene were they shooting? Just about the most famous one that Dune has. Paul Atreides' encounter with the Bene Gesserit mother as she subjects him to the trial of the Gom Jabbar. Pretty ambitious for a first day on the job. We've already mentioned that Denis Villeneuve is particular about how he does things. The result of this is that the man produces films that are visual and auditory feasts, sumptuous in their detail and complexity. It makes sense that one of the very first people to come attached to the project after Villeneuve signed on was composer Hans Zimmer. Villeneuve and Zimmer previously worked together on Blade Runner 2049, and the guy has admitted that it was a career-long dream to score a Dune film. Zimmer also initially rose to prominence for his willingness to integrate electronic elements in with conventional orchestral scoring, which he has definitely used to his advantage in assembling a soundscape for Dune. The composer has acknowledged that he worked to create entirely new digital instruments, a good approach when creating the music of a world that author Frank Herbert filled up with original instruments like the 9-stringed zither-like balisette. Zimmer has also discussed that it was important to him to incorporate vocal elements in the film's score, highlighting the voices of women and keeping with the original novel's themes of the Bene Gesserit and other women working in the background to guide the politics of Dune's massive, sprawling space empire. And if you can't wait to hear it, you, my friend, are in luck. Water Tower Records has put the score up early on platforms like Spotify and YouTube, and you can listen to it right now. It's a good score. Just maybe wait until the end of this video before you go looking for it, yeah? So we've talked sound, but let's take a look at the other side of Villeneuve's sensibility: practical filmmaking. Like virtually any film produced since the year 2000, Dune was always going to have some CGI in it. Even the much-loved Mad Max Fury Road used a ton of supplemental CGI to bolster all of those physical effects and stunts, and it seems like Dune will be much the same. Just as he did with Blade Runner 2049, the director has seen the construction of some truly massive and detailed sets, with the team behind the film's production design developing multiple architectural styles and design sensibilities so that audiences aren't just looking at lavish locations, but are also learning a new visual shorthand that lets them know right away if they're inside of an Atreides palace, a Harkonnen dungeon, or a compound built by Arrakis' indigenous freemen. On top of the sets, there are also extensive location shoots in the vast deserts of Jordan and Saudi Arabia. If you've ever been in the open desert, you know that the intense scale and the sweeping vistas create a sense of being small that it would be hard to recreate using CGI alone. Since a lot of Dune takes place out in the sand and the rocks, it makes sense that the production would spend so much time out there. But Villeneuve didn't stop there. To embellish the sense of being out in a real, breathing world, the production brought huge ornithopter props built onto crane-mounted gimbal arms with them to simulate the flying scenes, created animatronics and puppets for Dune's smaller creatures and for the big worms themselves. Well, those guys are computer-generated, but in order to produce the effect of the worms grinding underfoot through the sand or breaching the dunes, tech crews buried massive metal plates under the sand and wired them up to vibrate at various speeds and cause the sand to dimple, run, or even suck actors down into the earth. It's all very impressive, and that's before we even start to talk about the costumes. Costume designers working on Dune have claimed to have designed and produced over 1,000 distinct costumes for the film, and those still suits that everyone's wearing out in the desert, they are not just for show.
You've worn a still suit before?
No, this is my first time.
In order to keep actors relatively comfortable on taxing shoots in the triple-digit temperatures of the open desert, the suits were designed to allow air circulation, despite how tight they may look, and the materials were chosen specifically to wick away sweat and keep the actors dry. Heck, given enough extra time and money, they probably could have built them to collect and recycle all of the water, just like the suits are supposed to. But anyway, that's all the technical stuff. Let's talk about acting. Love him or hate him, Timothee Chalamet is at the heart of this version of Dune. The young actor brought an unexpected difficulty to the set, however, and it just happens to be that beautiful head of hair of his. According to Villeneuve, Chalamet's unruly mop had to be worked with and directed like it was a living thing all on its own, but that didn't stop the director from getting attached to his star. Remember before when we said that they shot the Gom Jabbar scene early on in production and that it made Villeneuve certain that he had picked the correct star and that the film would work? Well, what we didn't mention was that Chalamet's performance didn't just ease the director's mind, it made him cry too. We'll certainly get all sorts of stories about the production of Dune in the coming days as the film is released worldwide, but let's close out on one final production story about our favorite amiable Swede, Stelan Skarsgard. First of all, did you know that the dude is 6'3" tall? Yeah, we found that out doing research for this and it kind of blew us away, but anyway. To get the role of Baron Harkonnen, Skarsgard had to spend about 8 hours in a makeup chair every day just to get those prosthetics glued down, blended, and then taken off again. According to the actor, he spent about 80 hours of his total time on the Dune set getting makeup to play the creepy, gross hovering Baron. And while it doesn't look like Harkonnen is quite as gruesome in this film as he was in the Lynch version, he doesn't seem to be covered in boils anyway, the two versions share a love of hanging out in nasty pools of slime. In fact, during shooting, Skarsgard, apparently over the discussion of how to portray the character while he was submerged in all of that goo, made an executive decision and climbed into the pool all on his own in all of that makeup, submerging himself and holding his breath while he was filmed. That is some crazy dedication. Those prosthetics can get dangerously heavy when they're wet. And there we are. Good or bad, Dune promises to be one of the biggest movie spectacles of the year. Of course, for a film as big as this, we'll surely be learning more of its secrets once it comes out. Thank you for hanging out with us here at ScreenRant. We'll catch you next time. See ya!
You fight when the necessity arises, no matter the mood. Now fight!